Hello. I'm going to ask you to do something for me right now. I need you to turn to somebody next to you, preferably someone you don't know. Say hi and ask them, what is your story? You have 30 seconds. Okay. All right. Okay, come back to me. All right, thank you. So, how many of you had something to say right away? Okay. And how many of you had to think a little bit before saying something? I'm with those people who had to think a little before saying something. I believe everybody has got a story to tell, and I also believe that we could all be story listeners. And that belief is what has brought me on the stage today. I swapped stories with somebody who was gracious enough to hear my story and generous enough to share theirs with me, after we acknowledged each other's presence by simply saying hello. So, being an international student attracts a lot of conversation and questions. And one question that I usually get is, where are you from? And I should point out that now that's a great opportunity for me to talk about my culture and my country of Zambia, and the languages, the food, and of course the animals. But I have not always been so keen to talk about where I'm from and what makes me who I am. I've had to learn and decide to share when given the opportunity. Because sometimes people would define you before you can define yourself, and that can leave you numb. People can ask to hear your story, but would not listen, and that can freeze your spirit. I remember being asked if I swam across the ocean to get here, or if my family had AIDS. But my personal favorite is if I was only wearing clothes for the first time. To which I responded, no, we do wear clothes in Zambia. But that did not stop the lady from bringing me clothes, right down to the undergarments. And because my culture tells me to respect my elders, I simply put a smile on my face, and with all the gratefulness I could muster at that moment, I said thank you to this well-intentioned lady. I decided to make her feel good about herself, even if it made me feel sad and irritated. I decided to let her feel good that she was charitable, even if I didn't ask for any charity, even if I didn't need it. So I started to put on a mask. I grew up in eastern Zambia, even if ethnically I'm from the northern region. And I remember going swimming in a creek near our home. And my friends would be from families who were Indian, and their parents would be Hindu. And sometimes we share food with their parents who would practice Ramadan. And I do remember my Catholic parents gathering all of us to go to these events where traditional ceremonies were being performed. And these ceremonies would be so grand, and the masquerades would be dancing everywhere with people everywhere, food, laughter in the air, and it was just really vibrant and happy. And as children sometimes would disappear from the home early in the morning, and we'll go play, come back when it's time to eat, go play again, and come back at sunset looking like somebody had thrown flour on us because we were just so excited to play in the dirt or swim or wherever we could find entertainment. And in all those adventures we were doing outside the home, we learned to express ourselves. We learned to be out there and just be ourselves truthfully. And as adults, we grew up to be people who identified as Zambians, but more so as Africans, not as a blanket, but more of a quilt with different patches of different sizes, colors, and patterns. And all those experiences that we saw with the masquerades that would be done at funerals, weddings, or even when it was harvest time, We took those experiences as a whole. That quilt was an experience of loss, abundance, gain, wealth, grief, whatever experience we could have, but it still made us a whole. Now, I have been talking about masquerades a lot, so I want to point out two masks. In African culture, a mask is used to celebrate and express whatever an individual is feeling or the community. But in Western culture, a mask is used to conceal, to hide what a person is feeling or that community. You conceal what is on the inside because you fear of what the outside can think about you. So I decided to hide. I decided to conceal what I was feeling if somebody approached me with something I didn't like. I decided to tell people what they wanted to hear because I figured that would make this very uncomfortable space comfortable. I decided that I would rather hide instead of express or celebrate who I am. And if somebody approached me with a cultural stereotype of Zambia or the country of Africa, it's a continent, I would just wear a mask and follow their lead in the masquerade. I remember playing victim to a girl who had gone to study abroad in Zambia, who approached me and said, "I am so sorry that you come from a war-torn country." Mind you, Zambia has not seen unrest since the 1960s. So I was like, okay, good, I guess, I don't know. And I remember some people thought I had a pet lion back at home that I would miss so much, and that I found it so dreadful that we sleep in beds instead of trees like our ancestors taught us. I decided to hide because of the uncomfortability that was created in the space. I wanted people to feel comfortable. But then I went through the phase of, okay, this mask is very uncomfortable for me and I'm not used to it. And you do not get to learn anything that is true about me. To the phase of, you know what? It is not my responsibility to teach you anything. You can go research, Google it. To the phase of, okay, listen, let's talk about this. What are your intentions towards me? Yes, I understand that the statements that you make or the questions that you ask or the hair that you touch and say reminds you of a poodle without my permission is because you're curious. But why do I have to put on a mask to make you feel comfortable? My name and my sheer presence scream out my difference. My accent and my mannerisms highlight my cultural heritage. And I am so proud of what these things mean to me. Because there is a sense of pride that comes from knowing that you come from a resilient and vibrant people, knowing that you can badmouth your country or your continent on your own terms, and knowing that I can become an honorary Nigerian, Senegalese, Egyptian if Zambia does not qualify for the World Cup. And I'm talking about football here, not soccer, football. But you know, these differences give people the opportunities to impose their perceptions on you. And these incorrect perceptions, if not corrected, can actually rob you of your authentic self. So it is key that we discover our authentic self and share that with the people around us, because the right audience will come and celebrate it with you. Quite recently, I went to lunch with a colleague of mine. And during lunch, I noticed that he was glancing at me. So in my mind's eye, I thought, okay, he thinks I'm cute. All right? Okay, so let's do this. But then he said, "You are a strange African." And after taking a breath, I asked what he meant by that. And he said, "You eat rather slowly, and your English is really good." So, if this was a few years ago, I would have walked out of that conversation. But now it's moments like these that remind me of what it's like to be behind the mask. Because when you're behind the mask, you feel like you do not belong. And that can put immense pressure on you as an individual. It can have an emotional toll. Feeling like your identity is not important or your culture is something to be ashamed of can be a constant ally. And having to edit oneself into a version that is not authentic can put immense pressure on you on doing day-to-day activities, such as simply having lunch with a colleague from another culture. But it is until we learn to unmask ourselves that we can see our authentic selves. But I have to add that I have been in a hurry to judge other people before I even know what they bear or bring. I have coerced other people to put on a mask so that we can have peace between us. And I have asked very hurtful questions and said very hurtful things. But I have realized that it's until we decide to desire knowledge in a non-condescending, non-patronizing, and biased manner that we can actually see the other person's true self. And that when we examine ourselves and change what is not true, we can actually know how to live a productive life that is thriving. So it's key for us to sit down with people who may have different or even similar experiences as ours. And we may not agree with them, but we could be decent enough to sit and try and understand their perception. I volunteer around Southern Illinois to talk to individuals who want to learn more about Africa. And I do that through theater and conversation hours and any other forum that's presented. And sometimes it can be very uncomfortable. But when you know who you are, when you know your true self and you live your life authentically, those uncomfortable spaces can be comfortable because there's always opportunity for discomfort. And you also learn to leave room for failure because sometimes people will not understand the authenticity you present. The idea that they have about you and the reality that you present can clash, and that can surprise them gravely. So like I said, it's very important to examine ourselves and also to own our stories, to own our experiences, and present those when given the opportunity. Because when we do that, we find peace, we find love within ourselves. And that is very key to live an authentic life. James Baldwin said, "Love takes off the mask that we fear we cannot live without, and we know we cannot live within." And unmasking ourselves can simply start with something like, "Hello, what's your story?" Thank you for listening.